June 13th.
Yes.
We first met June 13th, 2020, when you organized Black Lives Matter protest in Coconut Grove, right here on Grand Avenue.
Right here on Grand Avenue.
We'd never met before.
This is true.
We'd only met through Instagram, and I came down from New York. I was at a funeral, came down the next day just for this protest.
Wow.
It was in my hometown, but
I didn't know that.
That's a real story. That's true.
I'm a big supporter of local, so anywhere I live, I make it my business to spend money locally. Even though it costs more, I understand what I'm doing, and so I purposely spend money in my neighborhoods. And since I moved into the Grove, I mean, I shopped everywhere. If somewhere opens and I can't use the product or service, I'll still patronize because it's important to sow that seed so people know that there's wealth here from the wealth here, that we're not going to, Brickell or Coral Gables. We can go right out of our door, and it's an appeal to us to do that when there's businesses there to support. So
off that note though, when it says businesses to support, why isn't there anywhere for Black hair care? Why aren't there things for the needs of Black people in a predominantly Black area?
Yes, everyone in my building drinks coffee. I mean, there's enough residents in this one building, just this one building, that could support a coffee shop across the street. And there are so many storefronts large enough and desolate enough to accommodate something as basic as a small cafe and coffee shop. That doesn't exist, even though the demand exists. So the fact that there's a drop-off is so noticeable and also so offensive. Because the blight starts at an area and it ends at an area.
32 and 37.
Period.
Exactly.
32 and 37. And people have been willing to drive through that specific block and just ignore the blight, or regard it as something that needs to be destroyed instead of something that needs to be fed, right? And so that it grows, because the joy of living in this neighborhood on my way to support the businesses is seeing my neighbors, is seeing familiar faces, feeling safe in my skin, feeling like my children are safe in their skin when they're in the neighborhood, because there's a familiarity there. It's no small thing to have in the world, is a neighborhood where you're familiar with dozens, if not hundreds of people who, if only by face, they know you as their neighbor. It's a big deal.
Absolutely.
And we deserve a community that serves us with the same capacity and strength as we serve each other. Because we do have numbers to support it. We do. We can have a dozen restaurants. Every single business that exists, empty building, could be filled with something. Because there are business owners here. There are entrepreneurs here. There's young people. So there's no lack in who can run a business, who can have a trendy idea, and who's going to go and support that idea when it manifests. But it hasn't manifested.
And when you mentioned restaurants and all these empty storefronts, but what about the empty lots? Like, the empty lots can be used for a lot of different things. And as you mentioned, there are entrepreneurs and young thinkers that know how to make money and know how to make these transactions. But they don't have a storefront. They don't have anything to sell from besides Etsy or whatever they use. The whole food truck idea, the whole using that land to help them create bigger business and bring it into the area and spend that money here.
Yes.
I see that as a possible win-win for both that landowner, a way for us, the city, to be able to pay off that landowner to get that ownership for the right people in the community, and to be able to put those tax dollars into building the affordable housing here, into building all the things that people need. But a barbershop, a hair salon, none of those things need to be this brick and mortar store. Right. And we're learning that more and more as COVID work from home progresses. And
so a huge problem with the United States of America is that we have all of the tools needed to be truly advanced, not in theory, right? Not in philosophical means, a constitution, but practically. We could be number one, but there is a refusal towards evolution. And so those of us who want things to be better in ways that don't exist currently, the people who profit from the way we exist, they disallow easy improvements to life because they benefit from the way things are, and they are the ones who make things the way they are. So we have this kind of refusal to do better as a country in general. We could be so far ahead, except that we culturally refuse to advance in certain ways. And you see that on a local level. I've been here, again, 7 years. I've seen no changes in my neighborhood, and I've seen so many of my neighbors avidly fighting through their nonprofit organizations, through their churches, through their youth organizations, actively fighting and saying what the needs are and seeing them not be met. For whatever reason. There's always a ton of reasons, but there's never a ton of results. And it's noticeable.
That's the thing, you gotta produce. If you have a position in office, you can't just make promises and not produce.
Absolutely.
You have to be held accountable, and you also have to have someone who takes the responsibility of doing so and coming up with the ideas, putting the right people to develop them, all those types of things. But we haven't seen any of that yet.
It's true. And I think it's an unfortunate thing for politics that no matter what you do and how much you do, we, the constituents, the people who vote for you, we're going to be looking at two things. What did you do for us that we needed, that we asked for, whether or not you promised it, right? You may not have said, I'm going to work on housing. But if we approach you and we say housing is an issue and you disregard us, we look at that. And then we look at what you didn't accomplish. And I think it's unfortunate, it may be a little discouraging even. I think that's one of the things that would always keep me from politics as a practice. But also I think it keeps fire under the feet of the people who we vote for to say we take it seriously, that you hear us and that you do something tangible towards making it better. Only, you have a certain amount of time and a certain amount of power, but with it, we all want to see it exercised in our favor. So, I think there are politicians who are doing amazing work. I acknowledge it, and I work with them. I work to get votes for them. We actually together have done voter registration drives in order to get the candidates in office that we want to see. So this is work that we're familiar with, but we really just want to see them produce what our needs are. We want to see them acknowledged and just met at some degree. I've been living in the Grove now about 7.5 years. So I moved here. I've been here ever since. It's like my favorite area. Even before I moved here, when I was deciding to move to Miami, I was like, it would be great if I could find a place in Coconut Grove, because it was like out of the way. 7 years ago, it was even more quiet because there were fewer developments put up, so there was a little less traffic, trees everywhere, and it was a little bit hood and a little bit bougie, just like me. So I was like, that's kind of the neighborhood that I want to live in. So I love it here. I really wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Coconut Grove is the best combination of all the different cultures in Miami. You've got every single race, every single religion, and it's got a very mellow vibe. But economically, it always has its ups and downs.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about Grand Avenue because that's always been down.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Cocoa Walk. We're talking about Commodore Plaza, Green Street,
right.
Those areas. You see what happens when they close off the streets is the business goes up because there's more walking traffic. But when you add Cocoa Walk and make it into a gentrified office building, what's the future of this?
So true. I mean, I feel like that was the biggest bait and switch. I was watching that project from its inception, and originally it was billed as a revamp of what existed, right? Something that was going to make the area better, the location better. But what in essence happened is that it became really much more limited as it relates to retail interaction, and it became more about a place for people to do their business, who maybe they don't live here. And now this is, it's an opportunity for us to lose space as a neighborhood instead of gain space that we have access to. I don't know of anything that's happening in that building that has anything to do with Coconut Grove specifically.
Nothing.
I'd be interested to know, but nothing has been stated. There's been no, hello neighbors, this is who we are and here's what we do. It's just been like we didn't gain anything as yet from that space. We lost space for people to interact and, have businesses.
Do you feel the momentum has carried over into 2021 of Black Lives Matter?
Oh, for sure. I see the changes that have come as a result of the work that we did. And it's not sustainable, right, for people to be in the street for years and years at a time. And I don't think it's necessary either, right? I think that there are so many different ways to approach the movement of American progress, of social justice, of racial justice. And that's one of them. So we will always show this is what we can do. We've taught the whole world about this, right? We do this in such a way that it inspires and it motivates the planet. And it's been that way since we've been here. We've been trying to address this. We've been trying to humanize the entire country about race. So I think a lot of things that have happened are a direct result of the Black Lives Matter movement, what it was and what it is right now, because it's still extremely active. It's still extremely important to my life. But with COVID not getting better, me asking people to come anywhere, in the streets or anywhere, is something that I feel not compelled to do.
How do you feel that the Black community's been affected by COVID?
So I've taken it seriously the whole time, and I feel now I'm probably one of the last people I know who still takes COVID seriously. As it relates to immunizations, the distrust in the medical system is merited. It's justified. Just before COVID happened, Black women were screaming to the hilltops that doctors were disregarding us, that they were treating our pain, that they were not listening to us have knowledge of our own bodies. They didn't trust us to know what was happening with ourselves. And we were screaming for this to be rectified, for doctors to come to an understanding and stop preaching and teaching racism in medical schools, that Black people have thicker skin, that we don't feel as much pain, that we don't have as much psychological depth, right, as other people, and therefore, medically we could be regarded lesser than, with less emotion, less empathy. So then COVID happened on top of this, and that didn't change. My biggest nightmare was having to go to a hospital and be treated by people who would have to guess what my value is to society, or to my family, or to this planet, and they could guess wrong.
They wouldn't guess, they would determine.
Right, and they would determine based on things that are all against my favor. So it was a nightmare. Like, I braided my hair because I decided if I could go to a hospital, I want to be as presentable as possible so that they won't see me in light of how I am now, but they can maybe understand that I'm something else outside of what you see right now, and they might value my life more. So the racism in medical practice is so avid, it's so historic, and it's so present currently that for a Black person to mistrust the medical establishment is common. It's expected.
It's understandable.
It's a coping mechanism, it's a survival tactic. So we still have to survive this system. And then to have to elect to trust a system that's been abusive throughout your history, up until this very minute where we speak, that's a lot to ask. And it's a reasonable ask. You want people to be inoculated against diseases. The ask is logical and it's reasonable, just like the mistrust. They are both equally weighty, as we can tell.
They go hand in hand.
They absolutely do.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things that, like you said, a Black person's medical needs have never been taken as seriously as a white person's medical
Absolutely.
needs. And now with COVID going around, Black people are afraid to take the vaccine in terms of being able to stop this spread, in terms of not hurting anyone with vaccines. The honest way to get rid of it would be to mask up.
Yes.
That's really the only way.
It's really the only way.
A Black person would feel safe right now.
And I feel like this is based on the community that I live in, right? And I mean, Miami-Dade. I mean, this city does really bad as it relates to COVID, in my opinion. Everything is open, it's everyday life. You're eating inside of restaurants, you're shopping, you're going to work. It's almost as if everything is normal, but we're wearing masks. And it's frustrating to live like this right now.
Look, I don't even mean to go off topic here, but I just got to watch my opponent speak at the White House podium, asking for more COVID vaccines. But it's like one of those things, you were the second guy who was infected in Dade County. You were seen in June, maskless at a restaurant. Like,
right.
What were you doing to get to this situation? You weren't doing anything.
No.
And that's what I mean about accountability.
Yes. Model correctly. Model correctly. I mean, the expectations are fairly low, right? Wear a mask. It's very low what we're asking you to do on behalf of everybody who you're coming in contact with, and you're coming in contact with thousands of people. So modeling the right behavior is no small gesture, because we have an entire segment of this country who refuses science, refuses evolutionary ideas and thought processes. And when you are contributing, right, towards things that are anti-science, anti-mathematics, basics, you're promoting the slowing down of everything, which includes getting over COVID-19. Like, we're tired of it, but we're not doing what we need to do. We're just like, I'm tired, I'm just gonna let it play out. No.
Absolutely.
It's so frustrating.
And in your opinion, well, from my research that I've done, the hardest hit industries have been hospitality, have been service, and
entertainment.
And entertainment, which, hurt you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where all of those will be reignited by tourism.
Yes.
But we have to get to that point. So we can't really ever get to that point until we move on from this.
Yeah, it's true. And I feel like what is happening, instead of us getting past it, we're just trying to work through it. and working through it is costing people their lives. But maybe there's this level of desensitizing people to the amount of death that happens. So we hear these numbers, and if it's not you or your mom or your sister or your brother, you're like, well, we'll just kind of keep it moving.
Take our chances.
You see people traveling internationally, which I just don't even understand right now. People have been traveling to Miami since COVID started, and the fact that we need tourism has trumped the fact that we need to live in order to have tourists. That the people who serve tourists are the ones who are dying because of COVID. So we're asking them to go to work and serve people who are traveling for fun and put their own lives at risk to be later disregarded as just some random number that people don't have to care about.
And that's exactly the way I see this whole big tech phenomenon. Big tech doesn't bring jobs to these people. What's going to happen to all of these people who work? They're going to get more hospitality jobs, that's for sure, because they're going to be buildings going up left and right. But they're not going to live in the city of Miami.
No, and even if you bring hospitality work, you're also bringing in jobs that are tip-based, which
that's
is
the worst.
Absolutely.
Cash really isn't king anymore when it comes to tips.
And it's racist. The whole idea of tip-based wages, it stems from racism and it continues it perpetuates it currently. So if you're bringing jobs where people are going to be given the lowest minimal wage in an expensive city, and then you give them a tip-based economy, we're in a position where, again, we have to depend on people coming to Miami for Miami residents to thrive. And I don't think we have to do that. It's international. People are going to come here because the commercials are made by us, right?
Yeah.
Our rappers, our musicians, our artists, our culture, our festivals, the things we do keep us on the map. We stay on the minds of people all over the world. They're going to come here. Enough of them will come from everywhere that tourism will always be a thing. But for those of us who live here, who make the place pop, right? Who make the place a place people want to be, because Florida is gorgeous. We have how much coastline? You can go anywhere. There's a reason they come here. We are the reason. Our culture is the reason why they come to this place, because we make it that. So we deserve to have an economy that's supported by who we are and what we do. It allows us to thrive without depending on someone that's outside of Miami to come to Miami in order for us to have wealth and opportunity and business and exposure.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things that it comes to bringing the right jobs,
Yes.
making partnerships with the right companies, the right industries that will culturally integrate all of these things into a booming tourism sector.
Absolutely right.
And it's one of those things where I see the whole big tech idea as a big facade, as a fix that we're going to bring you jobs, but you're not bringing jobs to the right people. You're not helping the right people. I've personally lived in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived in Williamsburg, two of the most gentrified places. I contributed to their gentrification. I'm well aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
That can't happen here, but the way it's geographically mapped out, it's perfectly set up to be.
This is how it happens.
Because exactly, all the wealth is being built on the coast, and as sea level rises, and the current leaders aren't doing the most they can about fixing it, the more value is going to be put on the higher lands.
And the higher lands are the ones where people of color, Black people specifically, were basically banished to. As far away from the beach as we could be put is where we were corralled and redlined, and now highland is the best land. So now, the first people to be displaced are, our Black people.
And we've literally seen it already. Little Haiti, it's slowly changing.
Coconut Grove,
Wynwood,
yes.
Everything is different. The thing about Coconut Grove being gentrified is that I don't even see it being gentrified for the better. Like nothing great has happened in Coconut Grove that people are still not ending up at Green Street at the end of the night.
And now you've got these gigantic box houses that are springing up, and they're completely changing the idea of what the neighborhood is. The architecture is a part of the language of the community. And now you've got this change in architecture, which also brings a change in ideas, if you will. So we have this CRA now in the Grove that's being developed.
I just had a conversation about it the other day.
And they've hosted meetings with the community where, some people are invited to sit in on these meetings and to hear the initiatives. And for me, that was as heartbreaking as it was hopeful, because this would be the third historically Black city where I've lived, where a CRA has come in, and initially they do help a lot of people who didn't have help otherwise. But it's like giving me a lollipop and stealing my car, the lollipop was yummy for 15 minutes, but I really needed the car to sustain me. So the exchange is always a short-term help for the people who live there in order to build a neighborhood up and to address issues like food deserts, right? Lack of economic opportunity, lack of children engagement in the neighborhood, and you bring in local artists. And I know because I've been a part of that. This is where they bring me in. Oh, you're a dancer, you're a singer, you're an educator, you're a designer. We want you to come in and teach the children, and so we'll offer you economic incentive, low rent. So they bring in the artists to change the actual look of the neighborhood. The murals pop up, the outside yoga classes start happening.
A good outtake. But exactly going off what you said, for people who don't know, CRA stands for Community Redevelopment Agency.
Right.
The word redevelopment.
Right.
Why does it always have to be redeveloped?
Well, in a lot of cases, I don't know if this is a thing, but it's always been a historical neighborhood where I've lived, where CRAs were formed in order to address the needs of the neighborhood. So there's promise and potential for money that is not being looked into and explored and developed. And it used to be a thing that it's not anymore. So they are redeveloping because they're coming somewhere where there was animation and business and thriving communities, and now there's not. So a lot of times they are redeveloping, but they're building it up for people who are not you. You get to stay here and build it. You get to stay here and benefit while we get it going. Once it's going, you are not in the picture.
You're not in the picture, and it's one of those things that one of our previous conversations is redevelopment really just stands for tearing down communities, and that's exactly what it is. But what we need to do is restore.
Yes.
We need to restore culture, and what are some things that we can restore?
In this specific neighborhood, we can restore these businesses. I lived in Pleasant City for a number of years before I moved to Miami. Pleasant City is the oldest Black neighborhood in Palm Beach County, predates Palm Beach County. Historically Black people made it, they built all the businesses, we know this story, right? When the CRA came in, their ideas were to understand the history of the neighborhood and to address the history of the neighborhood and to kind of get it going. But one of the things that was problematic on this one street that was like the main road, it was very much like Grand Avenue, small shops all the way down. Half of them were owned by people who didn't even live in the country.
Sounds like Miami.
Exactly. And so the problem was identical. These people owned these spaces and they really had no desire to do anything with it. They have enough money that they don't need to open some little rinky-dink coffee shop. They're a millionaire who lives in Russia somewhere. You know, they live in Siberia, but they own this piece of property and they can just let it sit and appreciate. Because now the CRA is going to redevelop the neighborhood. Property values are going to go up and this place is still going to sit here empty because the person who owns it does not have to engage with us. They don't have to care about the history of this neighborhood and who built this little shack 200 years ago. They don't care. They don't have to know that or engage with it anyway. And I feel like that's the same thing that happens here, where the people who own these places are allowed to just let them sit empty instead of saying you are holding up space in a neighborhood that needs space. We literally need services. There's nowhere to get Black hair care products. It's ridiculous. There's hundreds of Black women here, enough to support at least a very small shop. So we don't have to go out of town.
A very small shop, multiple shops, if anything, really. Like that, I think that's an understatement, but it's one of those things that sitting on land and watching it appreciate.
Right.
I was walking down Grand Avenue with an affordable housing lawyer the other day and asking the names of the people who own these certain properties, and the one that is right after the farmer's market on the right, but the affordable housing that's completely boarded up, it's owned by a guy and it's valued at $7 million.
Really?
That piece of property is valued at $7 million. And that's the higher part of Coconut Grove.
Right.
So you think about it, if Peacock Park and Panorama Drive ever end up underwater, where's everyone going to go?
Exactly right.
They're going to move up.
And we're up.
Exactly.
Part of the reasons the Bahamians settled here was because it didn't flood. How valuable is that right now? It's everything. You can build a house that is worth millions and millions, but if the ocean can take it away, it's no good. It's trash.
And that's why they're doing such on Florida, on Oak and everything. You see these houses coming in that don't look like the houses towards the lower numbers, but the higher the numbers get streetwise.
Right.
Oh my God.
Exactly right.
They're massive.
Yep.
They're gated. They're compounds. They're incredible architecturally. You know, but it's one of those things because yes, it's a great investment for them.
It is.
They bought property in a spot that is on higher ground.
Exactly right. They bought it as an investment, which is You know, it is what it is. This is what happens in capitalism and in real estate, but it happens at the detriment of people who live in these communities, and the people make the place. If people are known for being terrible, other people don't go around them. When people want to visit your neighborhood, it's because the people there have made it somewhere beautiful. They've given it history through their lives and their experiences. So you've got all these people who own property who have no investment in the human beings who have to live here and drive by their raggedy building every day. No one cares that we have to look at this every day. It's just, he lets it sit there. And I'm just saying him, but the problem is nationwide. It's block-wide, right? These people get to own it, and they don't have to deal with the psychological impact of it. They don't have to deal with the loss of opportunity. All the houses that we see and neighbors who we know, personally know, who used to live there and are somewhere else when they'd rather be here in their neighborhood where their history is, they're gone. And people get to own these properties and totally ignore it. So one of the things I think is an issue on Grand Avenue is that the people who own these businesses are not accountable to residents.
They just own plots of land.
And no one makes them accountable to us.
No one. And that's why I really feel that someone needs to go into City Hall and make them accountable. But the reason that it's not happening right now is because that's what happens when your leader is a real estate developing lawyer that has a ton of financial gain out of this. Where did big tech come from? Oh, tons of investments.
Right.
Like, it's all very obvious. I'm not going to disparage.
And so much about greed, because the ability that you have could very well be used to benefit so many people. And it's awful when you see it used the other way around. And I think that's the case with so many of our elected officials is we give them these reins and they go where they want to go. They start to steer things in the directives that benefit them, and it's tiring.
And that usually always it involves money. It's all about money.
Indeed.
But like you said, it's tiring, and they don't think about the effects of the humans that they're hurting while making that money. And if you want to talk about just displacement, let's talk about the trauma in those communities.
Exactly right.
It's not just about gentrification and affordable housing. It's about kids growing up with no parents. One of them's in jail, or all these different factors.
All these different things.
All these different things are a result of the greed that comes from displacing people and oppressing them.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
You keep people on their toes, and I don't mean that in a way of being alert. I mean that in a fight or flight response. You take people and you put them somewhere, and they stay there for 100 years, and they bring culture, they bring love, they bring excitement, they bring everything, and then you drop a bomb and you just push them everywhere. Everywhere. People that have left this particular neighborhood, they've sold their homes for, sometimes because another house is built next to theirs that changes the value of their home. Maybe it improves it, right? So their incentive is to sell that house because they're gonna make a lot of money. So they sell the house and they move. And in this neighborhood, we've got people who've moved all over the country and have taken with them parts of the culture of this neighborhood that are very important, that have made it what it is. And this is what happens when you displace people and force them to start again. You keep them in this fight or flight response where home ownership is out of grasp, and generational wealth is out of grasp, local economic opportunity, opening their own businesses. It's hard to do those things when you've got all these.
AKA, what are you doing? You're taking away their stability. All type of stability. And what creates stability? Roots.
Period.
Roots. We need to build roots in this area. They can't get displaced. You can't get pushed out because the people make the place. And the more we just continue to gentrify everything, but the truth is I don't even see it being gentrified. What are we doing? What are we doing for these people? Like, what is going on for you in Coconut Grove that is really helping your life? And no people being mentioned. It's just like, this is everywhere in Miami. This is District 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There are improvements that can be made everywhere, but you don't hear about a Brickell redevelopment agency.
Right, exactly.
You just hear about the underlying, and you see 1,000 Museum go up. Well, that's downtown, but you get what I'm saying.
Yes.
Is that there aren't these redevelopment agencies
Yes.
But you said in Lemon City, there is a redevelopment agency.
Yep.
Why? Well, because, that's a community that's been torn down, and what do both of those communities have in common? They're black.
This is true. I mean, I traditionally live in black neighborhoods. I live there and I seek them out because, again, I want to feel safe. I want my children to feel safe. My children wear their hair long in locks. And I understand that people who don't feel safe around black people in general feel even less safe around black people who are practicing their culture openly. So where I live, I want to feel relaxed. So I usually seek places where black people live because there's less threat, right? So I don't know if this happens in white neighborhoods where a company is assembled like a transformer machine to say, we're gonna come in here and redevelop your neighborhood. Like it or not, consider your ideas or not. This is going to happen because we are allowed. The people who you voted for have given us permission to come into your neighborhood and improve it for you. But not for you.
But not for you.
The not for you is implied, but never stated. It's always like, you guys have a great neighborhood and we want to bring good stuff to it. And,
Well, one of the things
how good does that sound?
I've learned the most throughout this whole process so far is that you might think you know people's problems, but you have no idea what their problems are unless you go face to face and you ask them, how can I actually help your community be a better place? And for some people, it's septic tanks.
Mm-hmm.
For some other people, don't have jobs to go to.
Definitely right.
It's all different, but you have to know, and there's not just one solution to every single neighborhood.
That's right.
You really have to dig in deep. And as a city that has a mayor that's in control of 5 district commissioners, you can easily have a hand in everything and make a difference there and still have the energy to go make your money, do whatever. But it's the point that you're neglecting. The fact that it's been neglected for so long,
it's true.
It feels purposeful.
It does feel purposeful.
It feels very purposeful. Let's not even fix the environment. Let's all take our boats to Brickell later on in 50 years and, we'll live on higher land in Liberty City, Overtown, Little Haiti.
Because if you see anything getting done, then you know things can get done. When you see them effective in any area, then you go, they can be effective. Look at what they did. Look at how this legislation improved this situation or these people's lives. So you know that there is the ability in government to improve people's lives. That's the purpose of having a government, is to help people. It's not a for-profit organization, right? It's not a money cow for you to go in and earn millions of dollars, and it's not there to just stash up billions and billions of dollars. It's there for us. The billions of dollars are literally ours, and we gave it to you to serve us with it. So when you see the government doing good things, you look at it and you go, you can do something. So the fact that you're not ever addressing this, it feels malicious and it feels intentional. I totally agree with that. It's hard to see it any other way.
And I think it's very rooted in the history, especially of this city. A lot of people don't take the chance to learn about the city of Miami and the past, everything from race riots. We can go even further back.
Right.
But the point is the oppression has always just been open. It's been so open, but the worst thing about Miami is that, it's against black people like it is everywhere else in America. But there's the people of different cultures are hurtful to each other.
Yes.
And it is almost purposeful as well, too, because of
So
that.
you remember me telling you that I didn't live here for a reason?
Yeah.
That was the reason. I've always experienced a sort of double racism in Miami-Dade County. Like, I've always experienced that, where I felt like I deal with anti-blackness in a lot of ways, and in the United States, the racial hierarchy only goes up and down, right? And the darkest people are expected to permanently exist as the underclass, which means everyone above you, and by above, I only mean with lighter skin or less melanin, is able to look down on you. And so in Miami, it was more pronounced than I had ever experienced it, specifically from the Latinx community. I never experienced so much racism, open hostility as I did from the Latinx community as I did in Miami-Dade. And that always kept me from wanting to live here, because challenges, they exist in abundance. I don't need more. And here it felt like more, and it has been. As a resident, I can say, oh my gosh, this is definitely a place where I experienced more discrimination, more hostility from non-white people than I have other cities where I've lived in. So it's real and it's true here. And it's unfortunate because
you would think it would be the other way around.
It should be the other way around.
Minorities are supposed to stick together.
Right. Everybody's supposed to fucking stick together. That's the motto. That's the creed of this damn country.
Absolutely.
And we know it's never been that way. But on paper, that's what it is. And so black people have always been trying to make it reality in real life for everybody. What you said on paper is what we want. Nothing more than that. Nothing more than what you've said. So when other people join into making it harder for us to all be one, is super frustrating. Like, dude, come on, man, the teams are clear. Yeah. It's good or it's evil. Racism is evil. This is not a hard decision. Thankfully, we can say it plain. It's good or it's evil. If you're racist, that is evil against everybody. Absolutely. It hurts everybody. So yeah, this was kind of like from Florida 6.9 for me.
in terms of,
Anti-blackness.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you can't escape it down here. Foreigners come down here, or not foreigners, but Americans come down here and feel like foreigners,
Yes.
you know,
Right.
because people don't even want to take to them, or,
It's
and-
crazy.
but you know, the people that will be friendliest to them are the black community.
And that's all, everyone says that.
Because it's a fact.
Everyone says that. I mean, and I have friends of all races and who've come from so many countries, and they will always say the people who judged me the least, the people who embraced me the most were black people. Because we know what it is to be hated on. So you will find us to be the least hateristic because we understand how hurtful that is to be hated on just for existing. And that's what we live in. People hate us for just existing, which is deep. So we're not gonna turn around and perpetuate that. We just, as a group, that's not what we do.